The FBI gave him a license to kill, and he became a killing machine.
He used to say, I'd like to kill them and then dig them up so I can kill them again.
He was a feared gangster, a ruthless enforcer, and moneymaker for the mob. Known as the Grim Reaper, he was well respected throughout the New York City underworld and beyond.
Greg was the kind of guy that would take you out for dinner and then for dessert, blow your brains out.
He would strike fear into the hearts of his enemies and was always one step ahead of law enforcement. This is the story of the Grim Reaper, Greg Scarpa.
The life of the special mafia killer has always been a conflict of interest for the feds. Guile and ruthlessness earned him the underworld nicknames of Hannibal for his tactics and the Grim Reaper for his violence. Even after committing more than 50 killings, Gregory Scarpa was never once seriously acquitted of it. Let's take a look at the Mafia Serial Killer the FBI created. Greg Scarpa was born to both Salvatore and Mary Scarpa, both first-generation immigrants in Brooklyn. Greg had to start helping his father deliver coal when he was only 7. Greg Scarpa, then only 17 years old, joined the Colombo crime family like his older brother, Salvatore Scarpa. Greg was tough and smart, and local mob boss Charlie Lo Cicero of the Profaci family quickly took notice of his abilities. Greg Scarpa was recruited into various loan sharking, betting, and extortion schemes the mafia ran, and word spread that he was violent in taking payment of debts. By the time Scarpa was in his early 20s, Greg had made his name by killing a target on a Brooklyn street. He was finally in. He recruited a gang and engaged in all sorts of criminal activity, including prostitution, drug dealing, credit card fraud, and murder. Greg met his future wife, Connie Forrest, in the 50s. They had 1 daughter and 3 boys together. Gregory Scarpa Jr. would eventually join his father in the family business. In 1973, Greg Scarpa and Connie had a partial separation. It was revealed that Scarpa had a mistress. He stayed with his longtime partner, Linda Shiro, for 30 years and had 2 children. The hitman for the mafia went by the names The Killing Machine and the Mad Hatter. He signed his letters to his family KM. He was cold-blooded and would kill or beat anyone without hesitation. According to reports, the hitman stopped counting after 50 kills. Greg Scarpa was arrested in March of 1962 for armed robbery. After he was taken into custody, the FBI gave him a deal to become an undercover informant for them. Greg accepted the offer and started a 30-year collaboration between Scarpa and the FBI. Scarpa was very manipulative, and the FBI soon found that they were being used by him more than the other way around. Mississippi FBI field agents recruited Scarpa for an unusual mission. Scarpa helped agents identifying missing civil rights workers James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, who had come to Mississippi for Freedom Summer to register African Americans to vote. The FBI believed the 3 men were murdered but could not find their bodies. Scarpa received a gun and money to buy information, but he didn't need the money. After kidnapping a man in Mississippi for the FBI, Scarpa narrated to a visitor how he placed a gun in the guy's mouth and started cutting his off with a razor before getting the man to reveal the whereabouts of 3 kids that were missing. The 3 remains were found 6 miles southwest of Philadelphia on August 4, 1964. Scarpa was dispatched to Mississippi for a second time in January 1966. He was asked to help with the murder investigation of Vernon Dahmer, who the Klan had burned to death. Scarpa and an undercover FBI agent kidnapped Lawrence Byrd, beat him with a pistol, and hid him at Camp Shelby, a nearby army base. Byrd was a TV salesman who also happened to be a KKK member. Scarpa gave him a brutal beating before shoving the barrel of a gun down his mouth. He broke down in sobs and admitted guilt as he choked on the gun. On the return trip, the FBI and Scarpa argued over how much money he should get for help. He had government assistance in the form of Social Security payments of $253 and informant fees of at least $150,000 from the FBI, but he wanted more. After that, Scarpa's status as an FBI informant was terminated. However, after 5 years, FBI agent Lindley DeVecchio renewed the flame with Scarp. It was not the final chapter. Scarpa laid the way for the infamous 1971 attempt on Joseph Colombo's life, during a demonstration for the Italian-American Civil Rights League, attended by 50,000 people. Scarpa, through behind-the-scenes maneuvering, sparked the Second Colombo War in the early 1970s between wise guys loyal to Persico and the violent Gallo brothers, and it was this conflict that ultimately resulted in the infamous slaying of Crazy Joe Gallo that year. Scarpa was crucial to the federal government. He produced the evidence that led to the establishment of the Title III Wiretaps Act in the mid-1980s, a historic Mafia Commission case that resulted in the life sentences for New York mob bosses Persico and 2 others. Scarpa lived a charmed life. Greg didn't just dress the part of a mobster, he also lived it. Scarpa carried up to $5,000 in pocket money for purchases and bribes, and dressed well. He had residences in Las Vegas, Brooklyn, Staten Island, and Florida's Singer Island. His wife wasn't aware he also had a hidden flat on Sutton Place in the city. As the 70s progressed into the 80s and his personal life fell apart, he became addicted to aspirin and developed an ulcer. In 1986, Scarpa had emergency ulcer surgery at Brooklyn's Victory Memorial Hospital and required a blood transfusion. He flat out refused to get blood from the hospital blood bank. Instead, he got the blood from Paul Meal, a steroid-abusing bodybuilding gangster. Scarpa unfortunately caught HIV from the blood transfusion since the needle Meal used to inject his steroids was contaminated. Scarpa and his family lied to everyone about his cancer to avoid telling his crew the truth. It was Thanksgiving Day 1991, but that morning there was a report in the Post about how Scarpa was rumored to be a snitch. Between December 3rd and January 7th, Scarpa shot and killed 2 rebels, wounded a 3rd, and accidentally murdered a member of the Genovese family. The rumor that Scarpa was a spy quickly died down. Scarpa killed at least 8 people when the Colombo conflict began in the late 1980s. Scarpa had been warning of a gun conflict for some time, ever since it became clear that Victor Orena Sr., the family's acting boss, was plotting to overthrow the imprisoned Carmine Persico and seize control. After Dominic Soma complained to Greg Scarpa Jr. with Colombo capo Anthony Scarpati, the older Scarpa was so angry that it was just a matter of time until Soma met an untimely end. Carmine Persico then issued an order to eliminate Soma. Scarpa invited Soma to visit his Wimpy Boys social club, and Soma gladly accepted. During the light conversation, Scarpa casually drew a handgun and shot Soma in the head. He approached the man he had shot and put another bullet into his head. Did it look like he was working as an FBI informant? No way. Mr. Scarpa went into hiding in March 1992 after a warrant was issued for his arrest for possessing a firearm. From April to August 1992, Mr. Scarpa met or called Mr. DeVecchio 7 times, but the FBI did not report or arrest him. Mr. Scarpa re-emerged in August 1992 to testify in a malpractice suit arising from his AIDS diagnosis. He settled for $300,000. However, his bravery in testifying alerted Brooklyn District Attorney detectives, who arrested him on state gun charges and federal racketeering and murder charges. Mr. Scarpa continued discreetly sending information to Mr. DeVecchio following his indictment, in the hopes of gaining lenience once again, and this time it paid off. On a $1.2 million bond, he was allowed to go home on house arrest. On December 29, 1992, Scarpa searched for 2 drug dealers after hearing that they treated his son Joey rudely. A gunfight broke out when the 2 men were spotted. Scarpa was shot in one eye, taken into custody, and sent to the hospital. And he joked to Linda Shiro, "That's all right, sweetheart, you can call me One-Eyed Greg now." May 22nd saw Scarpa's next murder. Scarpa opened fire on rebel soldier Larry Lampezi around 3:30 in the morning through the open car window as Lampezi locked the gate to his building. Scarpa and 2 of his crew members then exited the vehicle and pumped further shots into Lampezi's body. Scarpa's home arrest ended and he was sent to Rikers Island. He was arrested 10 times between 1950 and 1985 for various offenses, including carrying a concealed weapon, assault, fencing, stolen alcohol, leading illegal gambling and loan sharking operations, and attempting to bribe law enforcement. In 1974, he was accused of being a main conspirator in the theft of $4 million in stocks and bonds. In 1985, he was accused of masterminding a conspiracy to counterfeit credit cards, and he was arrested for the latter in 1997. Most of the accusations against him were either dropped or resolved with probation. In 1976, he served 30 days in prison for attempting to bribe 2 police officers. Even Scarpa's ties within the FBI weren't enough to keep him out of jail for long. He was detained once more, this time on multiple murder charges. Greg Scarpa had finally had enough by May 1993 and entered a guilty plea. The AIDS infection weakened him, but he was given a 10-year prison term and a $200,000 fine. At the Federal Medical Center in Rochester, Minnesota, he passed away from AIDS-related complications on June 4, 1994. The FBI using a killing machine to eliminate criminals raises serious ethical issues. Scarpa's narrative shows how justice and violent crime are blurred, making us wonder what happens when law enforcement takes such drastic steps for public protection. This ends our crime episode for today. Like, subscribe, and all that jazz. And as always, stay safe out there.